Success shouldn't feel this exhausting. If you're winning on paper, but burning out behind the scenes, you aren't failing. You're stuck in a psychological bottleneck called a hurdle of stop. I've been there. On the outside, things look great, but I was secretly burning out, convinced I was just lucky, and waiting to be exposed as a fraud. I realized I didn't have a business problem. I had a mindset block. Whether it's imposter syndrome, perfectionism, or fear or failure, these aren't just feelings. They are growth bottlenecks. Identify your specific hurdle and get one immediate action step to regain your momentum today. Go to tuepodcast.net/quiz. That's tuepodcast.net/quiz to take the 3-minute assessment and get your report now. This is an Undiscovered Legacy production and proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Once I became aware of it, like self-aware of, there's actually a benefit to doing this. So my scope has just exploded broadly over the last 10 years, starting different companies, getting into boring businesses like locksmiths and cleaning companies, and doing angel investing and all sorts of stuff, and real estate investing, and just kind of like learning how to do all these things because I had this confidence now of I can figure stuff out, and everyone starts somewhere. You just got to start.
Are you ready to unlock your entrepreneur potential? Are you ready to break free from all the barriers holding you back? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, your first step in getting across the start line. Let's get across that start line together, right here, right now, on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. Salutations, Skoob believers, and we are here again with another amazing entrepreneur. Today we're here with Brian. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I am thrilled to be here.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. Get across the start line. Super appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
All right. So right here off the bat, I'm going to have kind of a semi-serious question to ask you. You ready? You ready there, Brian?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Are you a Skoob believer?
I think I am.
All right. We have another Skoob believer. Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate that. All right. So what I'd like to do right here up front is get an idea of who you are, what your entrepreneur adventure is, and how you got across the start line in your entrepreneur adventure.
Yeah, sure. I love this question, and I love the show premise because I 100% relate to all the listeners here. I grew up Midwest. My dad worked for the same company for 30 years. Mom stayed home. And it wasn't like in an entrepreneurship family. Like I didn't have any uncles or grandparents or anybody, people just kind of seemed to work at a company, and that was that. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I moved to San Francisco. And so I didn't have any entrepreneurship contacts. I didn't know any like plumbers or electricians or the guy that owned the store, the deli. And then I got this exposure right away to the Silicon Valley entrepreneur, which is kind of a different breed. You're looking at, they go to Stanford and Berkeley and they've got this big tech idea, and they're not thinking about, how do I make a couple $100,000 and provide for my family? They're thinking, how do I raise enough capital to build this massive business that has to have potential to be $1 billion business so my investors are happy and everybody's happy? So it's just like a totally different kind of thinking. But I spent 5 years in that environment. And, you talked about in the pre-show imposter syndrome, and I had that in spades because I went to a school in the Midwest called Southern Illinois University, and nobody in California had ever heard of that. I came up in like the talent world, by the way, and I did what a lot of people as kind of a rite of passage. You do a year-long contract at Google as a contract recruiter. So, I did like the whole, you take the Google bus, from San Francisco down to Mountain View. It's about an hour, and Wi-Fi in the bus, and there's everything you see in YouTube. There's ball pits on campus and these little yellow Google bikes you ride around, and 20 plus different cafes and a gym and everything. But where I'm going with that is they they were very open about how they scored different universities. So if you went to Stanford or Berkeley or Caltech, that's like a tier one. USC and maybe like Cal Poly Pomona or University of Illinois, Indiana, these are kind of tier two, and there's tier three. And right at the bottom was my university. So I immediately had this kind of imposter syndrome, chip on my shoulder. Do I even belong to be in the room here? And then I ended up working as a head of talent, which is like a recruiting plus, because recruiting is really the biggest spender of funds, I should say. When companies raise capital, it's okay, now we got to go hire a bunch of people. So I was with all these early stage founders and exposure to, as they're working out their big billion-dollar idea, and some really, really smart people. So 5 years of just trying to like get confidence and feel like I could be in the room. And I never had any real entrepreneurship experience. And then I started to gain a little bit more confidence. I could see like, hey, they're smart, but I think I'm smart too. It makes me think of the like Stuart Smalley character, from Saturday Night Live a long time
Mm.
ago, of I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn people like me. So after 5 years of that, you start to kind of build a little more self-esteem and think you can hang. And then I had a whole thesis that I can get into that kind of launched that first business out of the gate. But origin, I was low confidence, didn't think I could hang with that crowd.
I think we all come across at one point or another, whether we're just growing up or just getting into a kind of like a new area that we're not really 100% sure on. And I think you coming from a non-entrepreneur family gave you a different kind of perspective of what entrepreneurship means. Because a lot of times if you have family members that are in entrepreneur and they've been in it for quite some time, they're kind of like, okay, this is the way I did it, so this is the way you need to do it too. But you went in there
Mhm.
basically raw. Like, I've never been in entrepreneurship before. Let's see what I could learn with what's around me. And I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. So like I kind of get where you're coming from that
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
But it's interesting to me that even though you were feeling imposter syndrome, going through what you were going through day after day after day for 5 years, you still pushed through that and still came out ahead. What was the breaking point for that? I mean, when did you finally realize, hey, you know what, I could do this? What was that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I realized that I had two things going for me. At the very beginning, it was work ethic. Like I wasn't afraid to work hard and, realized, and it sounds so cliche, but you can control that, right? You can't control a lot of other cards you're playing. But it's funny, when I grew up, I mean, I was about as average as you could get. I was probably the middle of my class rank. I was an average athlete, average intelligence, average, looks, everything. And then, but I still kind of had, I think, like a type A mindset, but really all that meant is I was kind of uptight and stressed all the time and, put a lot of pressure on myself. And even when I'd play like Little League Baseball, I was always put all this pressure on myself to succeed. And I think as I got to San Francisco, I learned a little bit more about how to think of it maybe from a tech perspective, and you could work 20-hour days, and there were some startups I was at where that was kind of the norm. And by the way, no one's really working 20 hours. They're taking breaks to go play Xbox and taking breaks to like, have dinner, and they counted like, oh, I was at the office for 20 hours. You probably worked 11 hours. Okay. Still a lot, but not 20. But anyway, I think I started to shift more into this like type B mindset, which played into the other part of how can I do this with the least amount of hours? And I started to, and I think a book that I read, the title's misleading, but it's the Tim Ferriss book, The 4 Hour Work Week. I
Oh
read
yeah.
that right when
Hmm.
I got to San Francisco in 2011, and it just kind of got me thinking about leverage and how could I do more with less, and if I worked fewer hours, could I still be as productive? And I kind of took this as a challenge. And funny enough, I don't think I've told some people this, so it's not a true shocker, but I actually got fired from Google because of this. I was like working essentially 2 hours a day. Like I take the bus and go screw around at the cafe and screw around at the gym and take the early bus home, and my numbers were like right there with everybody, in some cases beating, but I was barely there, didn't have to FaceTime. But I wasn't discouraged. I wanted to see if I could do more of this, in these tech startup environments. So I would always be the last one to get to the office, usually the first one to leave, but found like little patterns and angles that I could break, and ended up one of the places I was at. Again, I was leading the talent function. So a company that actually went through an IPO, an initial public offering. We were rated the world's top recruiting department for companies under 1,000 people. And, I was the architect of that. And I wasn't killing myself. I was just trying to think creative and find patterns that maybe people weren't looking at it. So, long story short, I think the frameworks that I kind of learned were you could choose to work yourself to death. And I think that's how most people might give advice, especially when you're young, you don't have a ton to offer besides hours. But I will say there's a lot to be said about we all have a totally different view of how we see the world. And you have a very unique view. Everyone watching, listening to this has a very unique view. And you might see a pattern that other people don't, which allows you to do things much different, maybe way more efficient and effective.
And then it's funny to me that Google would fire for something like that. I would have given you a promotion personally, just because. I mean, if you're able to work that efficiently, why wouldn't I want you, not only you to work that efficiently, but everybody else to work that efficiently too?
Where were you 20 years ago? I don't
Yeah,
know.
right. But yeah, and it's funny to me, especially in a corporate environment, and this is one of the reasons why people tend to shy away or get away from a corporate environment. If you don't fit the mold, they don't want you there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's very unfortunate that we've gotten to that point. But the nice thing is, now that you know you can do these things, what can you do for yourself that fits all of these ducks in a row that you can make into a business? So at that point, after going away from Google, or Google going away from you, however you want to put it, what did you build from there? Because it sounds like this turned into
Yeah.
a positive thing more than a negative thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up getting into some early to mid-stage tech startups, did 4 or 5 years of that. And then I had a thesis. I should back up for a second because I didn't fully intend to go the entrepreneurship route, but there's a lot of luck in this story too. So funny enough, I really wanted to be an expat in Asia. I just had this like vision in my head. My wife's dad was a expat in Asia when she grew up, so she grew up, in Japan and Korea. I just thought that was so cool. For me, though, it would be like Shanghai or Singapore. I just really wanted to have that experience. And I had this thesis about from being from San Francisco, there's fintechs everywhere, and San Francisco, New York, there's all sorts of the next generation of lending companies and wealth management, all that, all these, tech startups. And I saw that they didn't really care about the tech stack or how it was built, but they had lots of capital and a good product vision. So what if I could do this? So as my expat thing didn't really happen as much as I wanted it to, I did reach out to somebody in China who was very successful, had a lot of capital, and I told him about my idea. And he said, you know what? I like it. Let's go a little deeper. So I spent about a month like building a deep pitch deck and forecasted models and all sorts of stuff I kind of learned on the fly, which by the way, say yes and figure it out is something that I'm not afraid to do. I don't get stressed by stuff I don't know. I just figure it out because that's life. And you also have to remember that you're learning it for yourself, right? This is all compounding for you. Um, but after about a month of preparing, I convinced them, and it was a tranched investment. So little bits of investment over time, but the cumulative was $2 million. And I never raised capital. And this all of a sudden, I've got this $2 million check. And that led me to getting this business off the ground, which was technically a services company because we were building platforms for tech product companies. And I did get my expat experience, but not in Asia. Ended up moving to Buenos Aires, Argentina, where kind of did entrepreneurship on hard mode, where different language, really difficult place to do business, and figured out how to get an office, set up payroll, set up taxes, accounting, pay my team, and we grew that to about 80 software engineers. So kind of learned it all on the fly and made a billion mistakes. And thankfully I had someone funding it so I could make some mistakes. But the other companies I've founded since then have all been my own money. And there's a little bit of a different lens you have when it's someone else's money and it's your own money I can get into. But that's kind of how it all got going was building software for fintech companies.
Fantastic. And I think my favorite part of that story is number one, you were accidentally became an entrepreneur. Those are the fun. Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, because it's like, oh, by the way, I'm an entrepreneur now. How does that work out? But the experience that you had, and then you went away, but because of meeting somebody, even though the rest of the experience probably wasn't that great, you met that one person during that experience that helped you along with, your new adventure. And if you didn't go through that experience, or you didn't have that negative, or go into the place you didn't really want to go to, you wouldn't have had that opportunity. Sometimes at the point that we're at now, it may not seem so great, but the reason we're here is because something's supposed to happen in our lives that's going to lead us to the next thing we need to be at. So
Mm-hmm.
don't be really upset that sometimes that you're not really exactly where you want to be. You're supposed to be there for a reason. You're there to meet somebody, or you're there to make a connection somewhere that's going to help you along. I've had to tell a lot of new entrepreneurs that too. I don't really like what I'm doing. Are you doing it? Yeah, you're supposed to be doing something that's going to lead you into what you actually do love. And
Yeah.
and saying yes, those are the most exciting entrepreneurs. You say yes and then learn the thing. My mentor, Pat Flynn, when he was an architect, they were looking for somebody to do a computer wireframing. I'm not a technical guy, but like a computer wireframing of a room. And he was like, I'll do it. He had no idea what he was doing. He actually had to learn it on the fly too. And it was accepted. So sometimes that's fun. Sometimes it's like, yes, okay, I'll do it. What am I doing? Ask questions later. So that's awesome that you've experienced that. I do have a question though, and it does kind of go into imposter syndrome and that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
When you were experiencing imposter syndrome while you were in Google and working for Google, did you, let's see, how would you get over that imposter syndrome at that particular point? Because personally, I feel that if you're feeling imposter syndrome, you're actually going the right way. You know that you're working hard towards something. So I'm just kind of curious what your feeling was on that.
Yeah. So that was a really formative time for me because I think, and I'll give the flip side of that. In between the Midwest and San Francisco, I lived 2.5 years in Orange County, beautiful place to live, right by the beach. And, I rush home through the traffic of SoCal and grab my boogie board, and ride the waves. But I realized that I I don't think I was hanging out with like the most elite people in Southern California, by the way. But I felt like I was, meaning that this comment, if I was hanging out with smart people, I probably wouldn't have said this, but I wasn't. So, so I felt like I wasn't growing, after 2.5 years, my career was just kind of stuck. And then when I came to San Francisco, it was just the opposite. I didn't have as much playtime, but I was pushed hard mentally all the time. And in the moment, you feel like you're the dumbest person in the room. And that was the case at Google. That was the case at all these tech startups with all these Stanford people. And then I was also doing grad school. I didn't mention that at UCLA, and I didn't even want to apply to UCLA. I thought there's no way they'd accept me. And by the way, like UCLA is not Stanford by any stretch, but it's a top 12, top 15, whatever year they're doing the survey. And I thought that was like way too much of a stretch. And thankfully, my wife, really pushed me to do it. So I got in, and there was 38 people in that cohort. I thought I was ranked 38th in terms of intelligence and what I had to offer. And I mean, I was like afraid to even speak up. And these MBA classes are all about, being aggressive, share your opinion, disagree. And I was like the quiet guy in that whole program, just observing and like, what do I have to offer here? But I think I realized during all those three experiences, which all happened to be in this 5-year period in the Bay Area, of I can't think of another 5-year period where I grew this much because I wouldn't say okay, but I was mostly okay being the dumb guy all the time. And then, but I think it, pushed me to look for patterns, pushed me to try to find different ways to look at things. Um, and then I think once I became aware of it, like self-aware of, there's actually a benefit to doing this. So my scope has just exploded broadly over the last 10 years, starting different companies, getting into boring businesses like locksmiths and cleaning companies, and doing angel investing and all sorts of stuff, and real estate investing, and just kind of like learning how to do all these things because I had this confidence now of I can figure stuff out, and everyone starts somewhere. You just got to start.
And that's what I call getting across the start line.
Yeah.
It's so important to get started, because if you don't get started, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be stuck right where you're at for however long it is that you are going to be at. I personally, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
I would much rather be the dumbest person in the room and learn everything I can from the other 34 people that that are in the room. But don't be afraid to walk up and actually talk to them. Ask questions. Hey, what about this? And you said this. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Learn as much as you can from the people that are around you. And a lot of people have the misconception that these people are competition for you. And I don't know. In this case, personally, I think these people aren't competition. These people are there to help you, but you have to be able to take that first step with your hand out and say, hey, my name is this. I'm looking for this. Take that first initial step. They're not going to come to you. They don't even know who you are yet. Why would they want to come to you? You need to take the initiative to go up to these people and ask them the questions that you need. And because of that and everything that you've learned from those people, the imposter syndrome starts to get less and less and less, because now you know these are the steps that you need to take. So that's fantastic. That's a great story, Brian. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that.
If you were to come across a brand new entrepreneur that's just getting started, that's literally just getting started, they say, hey, I'm starting this business, what advice would you give them? What steps would you have them take?
This is something I say a lot, which is learning from my own mistake. So I technically did like a pseudo entrepreneurship, but I was really like a contract recruiter for a year. I think between Google and these tech startups, I'm like I'll go out on my own and find my own projects. But I legitimately had a website I incorporated, and I was going to try to scale this and bring other people in. But the biggest mistake that I made by far is I was so distracted by things that make you feel busy, like the grammar on my website, and I'm up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, looking for typos on this, or spending a week. Should I be an S corp or just a regular LLC, or should I do a C corp in Delaware? Like, no, get a customer. That's all you should be thinking about when you're starting a business is how do I get a customer? And then how do I get a second customer? And then how do I deliver for them? It's so easy to fall in this trap because there's information overload out there. There's a billion videos on entrepreneurship and articles and blogs and AI ideas and all sorts of stuff. Don't get distracted. Get a customer, service the customer, and just try to keep learning on your service or product.
That's right. That's awesome. Yeah. First of all, don't get distracted by perfectionism. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect. I mean, you can get down into the nitty gritty details of trying to make sure all your commas and all your I's and lowercase j's are dotted or whatever. But I mean, you're still not doing much of anything except for correcting something over and over and over again. So be careful with that. But if you're first getting started, first of all, you need to find your zone of genius and know what your zone of genius is so you can hone in on that one particular thing. Then when you get that, find one person with one problem that you have one solution for. Get that first customer. And then after you get that first customer, get feedback from that first customer and just use that information and get on to your next customer and so on and so on. Pretty soon you get a couple, 3 or 4 people underneath your belt and it just goes from there. So that's amazing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Brian, I have a tradition that I have with all my guests. In the next 6 months, where do you see yourself in your business? I mean, do you have a 6-month goal for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I've got 5 different companies now that I operate, and each one has a different goal. But the biggest is a Latin America staffing company with about 100 people today. And, our goal is to scale to the mid-market. So in 6 months, I'd like to have several customers in that medium-sized world, and then maybe in a couple of years later, we'll be at that enterprise game.
All right, awesome. So what I'd like to do with you, if it's okay, Brian, is I'd actually like to follow up with you in 6 months.
Yeah.
See if you've actually reached those goals. I'd also like to follow up with you and see what kind of new experiences you've had between the time between whatever now is and whenever later is when we talk to you. Is that okay?
Sounds great. All
right, because now you're not just accountable to me; you're accountable to all my Skoob believers out there. So don't mess this one up. No, I'm just kidding.
I like it.
All right,
sounds great.
All right, Brian, this is your time to shine. This is the time where I want you to advertise yourself. How do we get a hold of you and all that good stuff? Okay, ready, set, go.
Yeah, Plug Technologies, plugg.tech is our website. And you can go right to our contact page, and all those notes go right to me.
All right, awesome. Brian, thank you so much for being on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. This was awesome. I loved all your stories about Google and where you've been, and I'm really looking forward to see where you're going with this, okay?
All right, thank you so much.
All right, Skoob believers, make sure you stay tuned for the wrap-up. Okay, everybody, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, Skoob believers, what a fantastic conversation we had with Brian today. We had a lot in common. Both of us came from California. I love his stories, but I did have 2 major takeaways I want to make sure that you caught in our conversation. Being the dumbest person in the room is your greatest competitive advantage. Stop avoiding rooms that intimidate you and start seeking them out, because this discomfort you feel is not a warning sign. It's a growth signal. When we go into a room and everybody in that room is smarter than we are, then more than likely we're going to learn something from each and every one of those people that are in that room in some way, shape, or form. That's what helps us grow. That's what gets us across the start line, is the people around us that will teach us, that are willing to sit down with us and show us what we need to do. And those are the smart people we need to learn from. So make sure when you go into a room, whether you're in a classroom to learn something, whether you're networking, make sure you're absorbing as much knowledge as you can from the people that are smarter than you. and stop perfecting your website at 2 a.m. to get a customer. Every hour you spend on commas, business structures, and logos is an hour stolen from your only action that actually builds a business. And that's talking with people. And that's getting out there and learning and being with the people that you need to be around to make your business and your dreams come true. There is a place for the commas and making sure everything looks okay and make sure your logos are good. But spending all that time to be perfect in those things is just a waste of time. Instead, talk to somebody, get on a Zoom call, contact somebody, network, get into your local areas. There's so many other things you could be doing to make your business grow than making sure there's a period at the end of every sentence. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, Skoob Believers. Make sure you subscribe if you can, if you feel like you want to. I know I don't say this too often, but if you could please give me a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform that you're listening to right now or on YouTube, that would be amazing. It would mean the world to me to be able to get that. And we have some more great stuff in the works, so make sure you follow and subscribe. Okay, everybody, thank you. Bye-bye. And there you have it, future entrepreneurs. We've taken a vital step on the journey across the start line. Remember, every great business begins with a single idea and the courage to pursue it. And you've already showed that courage just by being here today. As we wrap up this episode of the Undiscovered Entrepreneur Get Across the Start Line, I want you to reflect on the path. You have to recognize the 4 hurdles of stop. Is it imposter syndrome holding you back? Is it perfectionism, failure, or fear? Identifying which one affects you the most is the key to unlocking your momentum. But here's the real secret. The hurdles are not in the way, they are the way. Every time you clear one, you're building the exact strength you need for your journey ahead. Until our next episode, keep pushing, keep dreaming, and keep jumping over those hurdles. This is Skoob, your guide across the start line. Remember, your future is waiting. I can, I am, I will, and I'm doing it today. Hello, Skoob Believers. Let me ask you a real quick question. How many cups of coffee have you had today? 3, 5, 7? And let me guess, you've got a Red Bull in the other hand just in case, right? Yeah, I see you. Now, here's the truth bomb nobody wants to hear. You're not building a business. You're building a caffeine dependency. Listen, I get it. When you're grinding 12, 14, 16-hour days, you're building something from nothing. When you've got payroll to meet, investors to impress, and visions that won't wait. You need fuel. But what if I told you that the fuel that you're using is actually slowing you down? What if the very thing that you think is keeping you sharp is actually making you dull? Enter Rise Coffee. This isn't your grandma's mushroom tea. This isn't some hippie wellness trend. This is science meets performance. And here's what makes Rise different. Less than half the caffeine of a regular cup of coffee. But here's the kicker. You won't miss it. 6 organic powerhouse mushrooms, including cordyceps, what Olympic athletes use, and lion's mane, what Silicon Valley biohackers swear by. Sustained energy that doesn't spike and crash. We're talking smooth, clean power from morning to moonlight. Crystal clear focus without the jitters. Imagine closing the deal with calm, confident mind instead of the caffeine chaos. Gut health and immune support, because what's the point of building an empire if you're too sick to enjoy it? So here's the challenge to you. Stop borrowing energy from tomorrow. Stop running on fumes and call it a hustle. Stop wearing your caffeine addiction like a badge of honor. Real entrepreneurs optimize, real entrepreneurs adapt, real entrepreneurs win. You can't win if you're crashing at 2 p.m. while your competition is just getting started. Break the cycle. Head to risesuperfoods.com right now and use code PODNA15 for 50% off your first order. That's PODNA15 for 15% off. Try it for 30 days. If you don't feel the difference, if you don't feel sharper, calmer, more focused, more alive, then go back to your 6-a-day cup habit. But I'm telling you, we won't, because once you feel what real energy feels like, you'll never go back. Ditch the addiction. Fuel your empire and rise up. Rise Coffee, energy that builds, not burns.